In this video, you will not be learning how to make a painting worth millions of pounds, but you will be painting some sunflowers just like Vincent Van Gogh. Welcome to another watercolour workshop. So for this painting you will need some lemon yellow, an orange colour, brown orange colour, a blue, ultramarine blue I've got here, and possibly some Payne's grey. These are all Sennelier watercolours. I'm also using a medium round synthetic brush. It's about size 7 or 8. Here's a quick tutorial on how to paint petals. It's 2 curved lines, then fill in the middle. Easy. So basically you have to start with your circle and draw from the middle circle to the outer circle. Line, line, fill it in. Line, line, fill it in, and that's it. You've got to do that over and over. Whoops, I think I've left my guideline for the outer circle too heavy there. So that's my kneadable eraser, and I'm just going to remove it quickly. Obviously, speed it up a lot quickly. Okay, back to the painting. Oh no, draw in the top of the vase. Back to the painting, and here we go. Line, line, fill it in. Line, line, fill it in. Yeah, I'm afraid you're going to be doing a lot of that in this painting. This is a lemon yellow, by the way, obviously. Now, here's the orange colour, and I'm painting the centre of the flower. The yellow petals are still wet at this stage, so where you touch the orange to the yellow, you will get some bleed. I don't mind that. I like it, in fact. I think Vincent would approve of that. Now, yellow and orange together, and you get this pale yellow-orange. And I'm just putting on some slight shading of the petals. I'm basically looking for any gaps of white near the centre and just filling them in. On the first flower, it's starting to dry now, and I'm painting over it with you can see that the mixture is fairly thick, fairly creamy. It's not super wet. So we can paint over the yellow that is a little bit damp, and it won't run too much. So you have to go around and do every flower. Start with the lemon yellow, then some of the yellow and orange mix, and I'm kind of working from one to the other, depending on how wet each flower is. So when the flower is freshly painted, absolutely wet, you can't really go over it with another colour. But as it dries and it becomes just damp rather than wet, then it's fine to add some of the shading colours, which in this case is the mix of the yellow and the orange. The pure orange goes into the middle. And you just have to work your way around the painting in that way. Use your judgment as to how wet or damp an area is. So now I've got some of the ultramarine blue and some of the orange, and if you mix them together, you get quite a dark colour. A little piece of spare paper there at the bottom to test colours on. So this is the colour to use in the very centre of the sunflower. The orange parts are pretty much dry now. If they weren't dry and they got some bleed, it wouldn't really bother me that much, because we will be going over that later on. So there's my centre, which is quite a dark value. Now I'm adjusting the darkness of that value by putting some more orange into it. I get a dark brown rather than a black stroke grey. And I'm just dotting the orange-brown area with a darker value. You can see it's quite a wet pen there. So they're not perfect dots. It's not meant to be perfect representation of the centre of a sunflower. It's it's impressionistic, so you don't have to look at a source and copy every dot. Just try to cover most of the bright orange colour with this mid brown. I'm mixing up a dark value again, and I'm going around the edge of the centre where the heart of the flower meets the petals. So you really do have to have the petals dry at this stage, because if you put the dark colour on and petals are wet, the petals will turn green or grey. Now I'm mixing some blue and yellow and orange together. Various, mostly yellow and orange, and then a touch of the blue. And I adjusted it as I went along to get this yellow ochre. Would you call this, maybe? I mean, if you've got a yellow ochre in your collection, then by all means, squeeze some out to paint the vase in a kind of earthenware colour, if you know what that is. Kind of browny, yellowy colour that a lot of old jugs tend to be, certainly in Britain. You can paint your vase any colour you want. I think Van Gogh's quite often the blue. Anyway, we're going with this earthenware colour. And I've left some white at the front there. The idea is that the light is shining probably from the front. So we've got a reflection, maybe from a window, on the vase itself, on the vase, the part of the vase that is facing upwards, which is the top half. As I go along, I am now darkening the brown by adding some blue. It's almost a green, it's almost getting towards a green now. So this is some basic shading. So the light's coming from the front and the right. So on the left, we're going to get some shadows, and also in the lower half of the vase there, if we put a slight shadow value there, it gives it a bit of form. It makes it look more bulbous in nature. And then just put a little cast shadow on the ground in preparation for later. Okay, back to the yellow now. And some blue to mix green. Yellow and blue equals green. So I'm going to do the leaves. I'm starting off this leaf with some pure yellow as a kind of under value, and straight in with the green. So it just gives a little bit of variation by painting the green on top of the yellow rather than straight onto the white. Gives a slightly more natural look, blend of green and yellow together. And then I am adjusting my green mix by adding either yellow to make it brighter or the orange to make it duller or more muted, not dull, muted. So the leaves that are further back in the vase, out of the light, get the more muted value, while the brighter ones towards the front. And then there's some darker green still on the shading. And there I'm tempting to draw a line with a stick, which is the other end of the brush. Use a stick, use your fingernail, use anything with a point on it. I'm adding some variation of green here, mostly darker values to represent the shaded areas, backs of the flowers, the leaves and so on. what I'm aiming to do is try to fill in as many white areas as possible, especially this area here between the flowers and the vase. So you have to use your judgments and put your green shade where you think it would be. It's generally in the deeper areas of the painting. Okay, quick view there of a watercolour pencil. It's red or crimson, perhaps. So I've actually dipped it into my pot of water. I'm using it to outline the vase. Because if you look at a Van Gogh painting, you'll see that he was very illustrative. He would use thick lines around his paintings. So it's not meant to be real. You wouldn't get this in real life, obviously. But we're not trying to do real life. We're trying to do a Vincent Van Gogh style painting. Okay, so there's my red line. If you don't have a watercolour pencil, you can use paint, obviously. There we go. Starting to look like a painting by Vincent Van Gogh now. So now I've mixed up some brown, which if you remember was orange and blue. Just a little test on my piece of scrap paper there. And dry brushing. If you don't know what dry brushing is, the paint is fairly dry on your brush and you drag it, the side of the brush, across the dry paper. I do have a video on different brushstrokes and different techniques, essential techniques you can have a look at. I'll put a link to that in the description. So the idea is that you get some coverage of the paper and some of the white of the paper is left behind. So typically you could do it to represent reflections on water, or in this case, the grain pattern of a wooden table. Okay, more mixing of colour now, and I'm mixing up a darker brown, which is the orange and the blue in various quantities. More blue, it goes darker. More brown, more orange, it goes a lighter brown. And finally, I'm on the blue section of the painting, which is the background. It's not always easy to do a background when you've already got your foreground in, but it is possible. So, and the first colour towards the bottom of the painting was mostly blue, but with a little of the brown mix. And now it's the pure ultramarine blue. It's very watered, as you can see. I'm carefully watering in between the petals and then dropping the paint into the wet area. So even though the paint is very wet and obviously it will spread, it will only spread into the areas that are wet. So if you can wet the white bit and avoid the yellow bit, you can get a reasonably convincing background without leaving any white bits and without staining your yellow bits with blue, which would be bad. You really need to try and avoid the yellow areas if possible. And you have to go around the whole of the painting to do this. You could, of course, leave your background white. It's traditional to do the background first in watercolour, but then you have all sorts of problems with how do you mask the yellow areas. And so sometimes I just think it's easier to do this way. Okay, with the painting, with the blue and the yellow together, it gave me a chance to reassess the flowers. I decided to put some extra bits of orange, orangey brown, yellow orange onto it. Again, it's your judgment here, but if you've got a photo of Van Gogh's sunflowers in front of you, you can learn a lot from that. You can basically copy what he does to a degree. So we're nearly finished. I'm just looking at the leaves again, I think. So I'm doing a little bit of negative painting around the yellow there just to reinforce the petal shapes. And then, yeah, I've got my a thin green on my brush. A thin has it quite watery. Just to paint a couple of lines on. 'Cause that leaf's a little bit messy. Can always cover it up with some shade. Shading colours. Here we go. Just to tidy up that edge. That's not too bad. More negative painting around the petals to reinforce the flower shape. Some spatter, definitely the end now. A little bit of spatter of blue and maybe some yellowy green. Yeah, why not? Vincent would approve. And we're done. Hope you found that enjoyable. And you'll have a go at painting your own Vincent Van Gogh sunflowers. Thanks for watching.